Welcome to the Grow Strong Leaders podcast. I'm your host, Meredith Bell, and I interview business leaders who are committed to their own growth and the development of everyone on their team. If you enjoy my podcast, be sure to subscribe and rate it on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you for joining me today. I'm your host, Meredith Bell. And those of you that have been listening to my show know that I love bringing to you leaders who are focused on their own development and also helping other people realize their own full potential. And I have someone with me today that is a superb, in my opinion, example of both of those. And I am thrilled to introduce you to JeVon McCormick. JeVon, welcome to my show.
Meredith, thank you. I greatly appreciate the kind words. Thank you.
Well, people are going to love this conversation. I can just set them up in advance for that. And before we get started, I want to introduce them to who you are and why I'm so excited to bring you on today. JeVon has a unique background that's unlike any of my other guests. He was born the son of a Black pimp father and a white single mother on welfare. So a part of his daily life were things like poverty, abuse, eviction, and discrimination. Fast forward to today, he's the CEO of Scribe Media, a multi-million-dollar publishing company that was recently ranked the #1 top company culture in America by Entrepreneur Magazine. And JeVon was also recently named Best CEO in Austin, Texas, and the company has won numerous Best Places to Work awards as well. JeVon's experiences shaped a mindset for modern leadership that now guides his service at Scribe Media. And he's the author of 2 books, and we're going to talk about some of the elements in both of those books. The first one is called I Got There, and his second one, Modern Leader, just came out in July. So JeVon, the subtitle of your first book, which I didn't say, is How a Mixed Race Kid Overcame Racism, Poverty, and Abuse to Arrive at the American Dream. I know there's a lot to unpack here. Tell us briefly about that journey. How'd you do it?
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, you started some of it. You know, my dad was a Black pimp in the 1970s. Put women on a street corner. Women sold their bodies, and my dad took every dollar. You know, the part that you didn't mention in there is he also managed to father 23 children. So I'm one of 23, and my mom, she only had one. I'm her only child, but my dad had 23 children. And as you mentioned, single white mother on welfare, but my mother was raised in an orphanage. So she doesn't know her parents, how she got there. Even the last name McCormick, I have my mother's last name, and she received that last name in the orphanage. We have no clue where, why, how we got this last name. But when she was 17 years old, they gave her $20, a small suitcase, and said, there you go, good luck, there's a world. So in many ways, my mother and I raised each other, because she was learning things at the same time I was learning them. But my childhood, Meredith, you hear a lot of people. Matter of fact, this was even said to me yesterday on a podcast. Someone said, oh my God, you had every reason not to succeed. You had every reason to end up in prison. And I always push back at that, because in my view, I had every reason to succeed, because the way I look at it is if you can make it through all of that, the rest of this is pretty easy. So I never look at it from a place of, oh, well, I had every reason. My dad was this, my parents were never married, and I got a GED. I don't have a college degree. I don't look at any of those things as limiting factors. I look at them as avenues to help me achieve what I'm after. Maybe the hill's going to be a little steeper. Okay, well, then you just got to climb a little more. But I don't look at any of my background as limiting. Even the sexual abuse. I was sexually abused as a child by one of my dad's prostitutes. She used to force me to perform oral sex on her when I was 6, 7, 8 years old. And, if I didn't do it right, she'd smack me in the face, punch me in the head, and tell me to do it right. And again, between those things, being in and out of juvenile prison 3 different times, being abandoned in a home with 3 of my half brothers and sisters, I don't use any of it as things that, oh my God, why did this happen to me? I look at those things as, okay, I made it through those things. So let me look back and find the positives in those moments that I can use going forward.
It's an amazing insight for you to have taken those situations and turned them around into something positive. And I know that you have faced a lot of adversity besides what you just mentioned. I remember you talking about something that happened, I think you were in 3rd grade, when you were standing in line with your mother to receive your monthly allotment. And something was said to you that really impacted you for your whole life. I'd love to hear that.
I appreciate that. That actually falls in my top 3 greatest life lessons. And my mom and we were standing in line. As you said, I was in 3rd grade. And this is back in the 70s. And, back in the 70s, you had to stand in line for your monthly allotment handout of welfare, your food stamps. It's not like now where, they've made it too damn convenient to be on welfare. They just put it on a card and you don't know if it's a Amex Black card or if it's a debit card. But back then you had to stand in line for hours. Well, there was an older white lady that was standing in front of us. And she looked down at me. She looked up at my mom, and then she spit in my mom's face, and she called her a nigger lover. And there's 2 things that came away from that for me. No one came to my mom's rescue. No one said anything. No one stepped in. And my mom just stood there and cried, and she had to wipe the spit from her face, wipe the tears from her eyes, and she couldn't leave the line because she had to feed her mixed race child. And for me, 2 things came from that. One, and I still smile about this. The first one is I smile and I still laugh because I'll be 51 this month, and I still can't comprehend how this lady thought she was better than us when she was standing in the same broke line we were for a handout. But second to that, where the real life lesson came is being a mixed race kid, Black and white. I realized in that moment, okay, no matter what I do in life, everyone's not going to like me. No matter how much money I have, no matter what success I achieve, no matter what I do, everyone's not going to like me. And as a young child, I made peace with that. I did not struggle in high school as so many kids do when you find out someone doesn't like your hair, your shirt, where you come from. Obviously I didn't go to college, but a lot of people don't learn that lesson until college. And then God forbid you don't learn that lesson until you're in your career. Oh my God, Sally doesn't like me. And it just crushes some people. Well, I dropped that off back at a young age, and I've never spent my life trying to worry about if people like me or not.
That's a real advantage when you think about it. People who have had so much more do get hung up on that. One of the other things that you did, and this was more recent, you changed your first name. You used to go by JT.
Yeah.
And you decided to adopt JeVon. Talk about the moment that you made that decision.
Actually, I'd go opposite, Meredith. I wouldn't say I adopted, I reclaimed. So my name's JeVon. And so my full name's JeVon Thomas McCormick. And when I had my job at the insurance company, I was the mail boy, the file clerk. I pushed my little cart around, and I aspired to want more. I didn't just want to be the file clerk mail boy for forever. So, this is back in the early 90s where you actually had to work to get work. And what I mean by that is you had to take your resume to places. You had to actually make cold calls. You had to, go and try to apply. It's not like now where you just upload a resume and go from there. You had to actually work to get work. And I remember I could not get a call back. And one day One gentleman, nice gentleman, white guy, picks up the phone, and the first thing out of his mouth, he says to me, "Hey, how did you get a black first name, JeVon, and an Irish last name, McCormick?" Well, at the time, I didn't know my last name was Irish. If you recall, I said my mother got the name in the orphanage. So I had no clue my last name was Irish. So I was just so excited to find out my last name was Irish. I didn't even focus on him saying black first name. So when I hung up the off of the call, it hit me. I was like, oh, they see the name JeVon. So in that moment, again, my full name, JeVon Thomas McCormick, I said, I'm going to go by JT McCormick. Meredith, the next week, I got callbacks, invites, appointments, just lit up. And it was so hilarious that to me, and it was bittersweet. Sweet because I figured out how to get in. You know, I had cracked the old playbook, if you will. Bitter because I had to edit myself to do it. And so it was a bittersweet moment that I had to edit myself to get in. And so fast forward, you know, I built my career as JT McCormick. But then back when the George Floyd murder happened, what really disgusted me is I saw the virtue signaling that was happening, you know, blackout on social media, or Blackout Tuesday. I mean, what does that do to progress or move anything? And then Meredith, we were arguing over a syrup bottle. As a society, we were arguing over a syrup bottle. But the thing that jumped out to me the most, I read a piece that said at the time there were only 3 Fortune 500 CEOs, Black Fortune 500 CEOs in America. So I went and looked up their names, and I saw their names: Kenneth Frazier, Roger Ferguson, Marvin Ellison. And as a bonus, the wealthiest Black man in America is named Robert Smith. So I smiled and I said to myself, oh, 4 very ethnic free names, if you will. And it was in that moment I said to myself, okay, whatever we're not, and this goes for all of us as people, whatever we're not changing, we're choosing. And so I was choosing to stay a part of the broken playbook. And I didn't want to be a part of the problem anymore. So I said, that's it. I'm going to reclaim my name and I'm going to start going by JeVon again. You know, I was like, well, I'm not a Fortune 500 CEO, but we've done a few things. As you said, we've won a few awards and things of that nature. And again, I didn't do it for me. You know, I built my career as JT. I did it for every one of those kids who has a different name, if you will. Rayvante, Laquanda, Jesus, Juan, Rosalia, Martavius. I did it for them that, you know, hey, maybe one day when you come into the business world, you can work next to a JeVon and not just a JT.
That's so great. There's so much to unpack in some of the things that you just said. One of them, you were talking about the old playbook. And I know in your new book, you're proposing we get rid of that old playbook and replace it with what you call modern leader or modern leadership. Talk a little bit about what are the aspects of the old playbook besides this naming convention that you just described. What are some of the other things that are wrong and need to be tossed out, and what are you recommending replace them with?
You know, so when I say the old playbook, and oddly enough, I just saw this on LinkedIn yesterday. Someone actually tagged me in a post, and it was a recruiter. And a recruiter wrote up this piece about how she's got a individual she's working with, a lady, and the lady has an ethnic name, if you will. And she went into her post and talked about how then the lady edited herself, changed her name, and then got 3 appointments. And I laughed because I said I laughed not at the lady. I laughed because I was like, yeah, I did that back in the 90s. And it's sad that here we are in 2022 and it still holds true. And so when I say the broken playbook, that's part of it in itself. But the other aspect of the broken playbook is you're seeing it right now, at least here in our country. I don't care if you're Warren Buffett, who just turned 92, or if you're a 22-year-old startup founder. If you are in leadership, you're a CEO, what we're seeing go on in our country right now, no leader, no CEO has ever had to deal with all of this at once. So take Warren Buffett. yes, he was alive during the racial tensions during the 50s and 60s, and you know the change that came during that time period. He saw the Vietnam War. He has seen interest rates at 17%, the Great Recession. He has seen it all. Hell, he has seen Roe versus Wade come and go, but he has never had to deal with it all at once. Now you throw in the extra cards, diversity. Now you got the virus. And so we've got so much going on as a society. And what's happened is a lot of your what I call playbook leaders who were just running the playbook for business are now tripping over themselves because they don't know what to do. Because guess what? These pages weren't in the playbook. Now you're having to deal with and accept and recognize, wow, okay, we have left a large amount of people out of the business world. And I'll give you an example of this. It wasn't until 1955 in our country that we started tracking the Fortune 500 companies, the largest 500 companies in America, 1955. A Black CEO did not show up on that list until 1987, 30 plus years. So when you look at that, you have a very exclusionary playbook that if you did not fit the parameters of the playbook, you weren't getting in. If you don't speak the language, you're not getting in. If you don't have the credentials, you're not getting in. And so what I have seen and throughout my career, because I never had any of the playbook credentials, is why does it have to be this way? It should be very different. It should be inviting for all people. And one of the first places I feel that companies could start is take a look at your job descriptions, your career descriptions, and ask yourself, does that role really require a degree? Does it? If a person has a liberal arts degree, but you're hiring for an assistant project manager, what the hell does a liberal arts degree do to help in that role? You know, I still have to teach you, coach you, and mentor you in the role. So you have a liberal arts degree. Woohoo. And that's the key to get in, is a piece of paper. And that's not me bashing anyone's degree. That's just me stating facts that if you have a liberal arts degree, it tells me nothing. Especially if your parents paid for your education, you didn't have to work through college. It tells me even less about you. So I say start there, but also recognize what I just said about the naming thing, because it's true. When people see resumes, conscious or unconscious, when you see certain names at the top of resumes, you're making a judgment.
So true. So in fact, one of the things I love about your new book is you say this really isn't a playbook, because leadership is not a game.
Exactly.
And I love that. So what is leadership in your mind? What does that look like in the context of creating a culture as you have that's resulted in your company winning numerous awards? That doesn't happen by accident. So it tells me, you know, you've been very conscious and intentional in the kind of culture you're creating where people thrive.
So the way I look at it, what does modern leader look like? It's truly putting people first, all people, not select people, not people who fit the playbook, all people. And for us in creating a culture of welcome, and we're very specific about that, a culture of welcome, not acceptance, not tolerance, not belonging. And the reason why I throw those three words out there is when I was a kid, you know, being black and white, I was always trying to be accepted by, you know, black people or white people. I was always trying to fit in somewhere. I always wanted to belong. And so as I got older, I'm like, you know what? I'm not applying to get into your country club. I'm not applying for college. I don't want to be accepted. I want to be welcomed. You know, I don't want to belong. You're seeing this right now. Now we're trying to throw on B onto the back of DEI and B. Now B is belonging. Why I don't particularly care for that word is belonging still implies that someone doesn't. You know, you belong. Oh, well, that means somebody else doesn't belong. No, a culture of welcome. What that means is it doesn't matter who you voted for. It doesn't matter what pronouns you use, how you identify, if you're transgender, if you believe in God, or if you don't believe in God. Can you perform in the role? Can you drive results? Will you uphold the company's values? You will? Great. Welcome. And not only do we want to welcome you in, we want to make sure we continue to welcome you once you're in, because you got a lot of companies right now celebrating themselves because they hired a chief diversity officer, started using pronouns in their email addresses, and hired 13 minorities. You didn't win. Diversity doesn't have a finish line. Like the game is not over. So it's not only did you welcome them, but you continue to welcome them once they're in. And that's very specific for us is putting people first, but all people.
And so what does that look like in a day-to-day operation at your company? If somebody walked in to see how people are interacting with each other, either virtually or in person, what are some of the things they do or don't do that continue that spirit of welcoming?
One, you don't bash someone else's opinions, thoughts, beliefs, values, and I'll give you a great example of this. So I'm a God guy. My kids go to private Christian school. In our home, and our number one pillar is I have 5 pillars. My number one is God, health, family, business, and investing. Those are my 5 pillars, but God first. Well, our chief experience officer, she's gay. She doesn't believe in God. And some people are just blown away when I say this. God forbid she was to get in a car accident and become paralyzed. I'd be the first person there giving her a bath, brushing her teeth, excuse my language, wiping her butt, reading her a story, albeit a slow one. But I would be that person who would be there for her. And some people just can't wrap their mind around, but you all don't think the same. And that's the problem right now for me with our society is we don't have to. I still appreciate her as a person, as a human. And that's the key to all this is we can have different thoughts, we can have different beliefs, values, but we're still human. And again, another place of where this came from for me is when I was a kid. When I say when I was a kid, this actually happened about a month ago at my kid's school. But it happened a lot as a kid. People would always ask me, what are you? What are you? And what they were asking is, what's my nationality? Now, that's a separate question, because when you ask me, what are you? I'm human. Well, that's what I am. I'm human. If you want to know my nationality, then ask that question. And that's very key for me, because that's all that matters is I'm human. Even with us, you talk about the culture, because sometimes we have different views within the culture. I'll give you a great example of this. Several people, a good, healthy amount of people within the company came to me and said that we should mandate putting our pronouns in our email address. And I said, no, not doing it. And people looked at me like, oh, you're not going to support? And I go, no. I said, it has nothing to do with support. I go, hear me out. And they said, okay. I go, there's 2 reasons why we won't mandate that. And I said, okay, number one, because all I have is a GED and I don't even know what the hell a pronoun is. I said, so that's number one. I go, but number 2, on a serious note, my whole life, people have been trying to put me in a box of, what are you? What are you? And I'm human. And I feel that when you go and you put pronouns at the end of an email address, if somebody wants to do that, welcome. Again, culture of welcome. You are welcome to do that if that's what you want to do. But I'm not going to mandate it, because you would never mandate that I put at the end of my email address, JeVon McCormick, half white, half black. So I'm not going to put at the end of an email address, JeVon McCormick, they, them, he, she, whatever. I'm not going to mandate that. However, because we have a culture of welcome, you are welcome to do it if that fulfills you. And people really respected that because they had not thought about it from that side. Because to me, it's very limiting of trying to put someone in a box of what are you? And no, we're human. That's it.
Great example. In fact, I'm wondering how many values, guidelines, principles do you as a company strive to live up to? Because I can hear you wanting to enable people, empower people to make decisions on their own. And so what are some of those core values that you look for when you are bringing somebody on board who will continue this welcoming principle that you live by?
Number one, our number one value is people. Do right by people. It starts there. And there's no there's no halfway do right by people. Like, do right by people, period. And so put people first in all the decisions you make, in how you conduct business and everything you do. Put people first. Like all of this. Why are we doing it? Why are we doing it? And how is it getting done? People. So put people first. Another one, our big ones, is responsibility. Again, coming from my background, I don't do the victim mentality and the blame game. You see that so much in our society right now, Meredith, and it's sad. We've spent the last 2 years and hey, rightfully so in some ways, pointing out what's wrong, who did what, why it happened. This shouldn't have happened. People did this. Okay, great. We spent 2 years. We got it all out there. Okay, everybody, we're good. You got it out of your system. Great. Now, society may not be our fault, but it is our responsibility. So now what are we going to do to bring actual change to this? Because sitting back, continuing to point fingers, blame, and say what's wrong, it's not working. It doesn't do anything. We're just sitting in the same place. So responsibility for us is a big one. Responsibility, accountability, take ownership. If you made a mistake, great, you made a mistake. And because we're all human. We're all going to make mistakes. I don't care who you are, from Elon Musk to Tim Cook to anyone. We all make mistakes. And here's what's interesting to me, Meredith, with this. We live in a society, we all have heard this phrase: you learn the most from your mistakes. Here's what I find very interesting about that phrase. If that is true, which I do believe it is true, then why is it if I go to any blog post, article, LinkedIn, wherever, I can find the top 5 success lists for Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, top 10 things Steve Jobs did to be successful. I don't want the top 10 success list. I want the top 10 mistake list, because success itself is actually pretty easy. What's key is, can I learn from mistakes? So accountability, responsibility, ownership of those mistakes. And once you make those mistakes, learn, grow, don't repeat those mistakes. More importantly, and I'll shut up after this, Meredith, again, we're human. Sometimes we do repeat our mistakes. But if you make a mistake the first time and then you make it the second time you truly have to sit back and reflect and say, okay, was this a mistake? Because if I do it a third time, it's a choice. It's not a mistake.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious, what would you say if you were making your own list of my 5 biggest mistakes? Because I remember you telling me you've made a number of biggies. I would love for you to share not just what the mistake was, but what did you learn from it going forward?
Wow. I would say my biggest one, and it wasn't, yes, it was a mistake, but it was also character. So I got to put it in the same bucket, if you will. When I lost all my money back in 2007, and I had to stand in front of the mirror and have this out loud conversation with myself, literally out loud. And I remember I had to say, wow, you taught yourself business, you taught yourself how to make money, but you have a horrible character. You are a monster in relationships. You are just degrading to women. You have no respect. You are just a beast in relationships. And I had to look at myself in the mirror and I said out loud, wow, you turned out just like your dad. And that hurt. But I had to own it. I had to take responsibility. And from there, what I had to do is self-reflect, look back and say, okay, how did I get like this? And, it hit me. And again, not blaming. It's okay to identify where it came from, but don't blame. My dad was a pimp. I saw how my dad treated women. He put them on the street corner. He sold their bodies. He took their money. And my mom was a prostitute. I saw how she was treated. I didn't have an example of what does a healthy relationship even look like? I have no clue. And again, I don't blame my parents. In fact, I'm very grateful. They gave me life. And my mom taught me how to survive. I had to teach myself how to thrive. And so I don't blame my parents. I thank them for giving me life. And that was their responsibility. Great. And from there, it was up to me to teach myself how to have a character that I wanted, how to be respectful in a relationship. So that was probably number one. Number two, I would say, came at the software company. Right when I ended up being president of a software company, but before I was president, I was just the lowest paid person in the company. I was the sales guy that sat in the storage closet and made my calls to close sales. And I became really good at it, like really good at it. And to the point, Meredith, I realized, oh, you need me. And I had this chip on my shoulder. I was so toxic to the culture, the company, because I was arrogant, cocky. I knew you needed me. And that was horrible. That was just a horrible way to conduct myself. And what fueled it even more, I went from the toxic sales guy to the toxic EVP of sales and marketing. So it went from me being toxic to creating a toxic unit of sales and marketing. And then I ended up being promoted to president of the company. And I remember I walked in on my first day as president. And I don't know if you've ever seen the movie, The Firm with Tom Cruise, where he walks in that morning and he turns on all the lights. He's there early. That was my moment. And it hit me. I said to myself, oh, I can't do this by myself. The only way you get this done is to have a great people around you. And it hit me in that moment. I am only as good as the great people I get to serve and support. And that was the mind shift right there. But the mistake going into it was the way I was as a person. But again, it was a great learning moment. And that was the moment where I learned, okay, you got to put people first. Like, because literally you are only as good as the great people you get to serve and support.
Those are two really, really biggies. And it tells me that you had this desire for self-awareness, this willingness to look inside and see what's missing, or what do I need, or how do I need to be that will be different so I get different results.
Yeah, it's something that, and this isn't to pat myself on the back. You know a bit of my background, where I come from, but it's something, in my opinion, that's very much missing in society right now. Is accountability, is to look at oneself and say, okay, what am I doing? What is it that I'm doing or not doing? You see this right now. The diet industry, multi-billion-dollar industry. And you'll see this coming up. We're coming into Q4. So come January, what's going to happen? New year, new you. And so January 2nd, the gym is going to be packed. But come January 30th, it's going to thin back out. And we as a people, we'll complain and we'll sit there and say, oh, I want to lose 30 pounds. I've tried everything. Well, if you had actually tried everything, then you wouldn't still be needing to lose 30 pounds. So that in itself is a BS comment. But we want everything right now. We don't want to accept that you have to put in the work. It takes time. If you want to lose 30 pounds, it's probably going to take about 3.5 months of consistency of eating habits, going to the gym. And I use that because it's a basic example, but that's life all the way around. You have to put in the work. You have to be consistent. And, even right now, you'll have people who come 6 o'clock on Sunday, they're pissed off. They don't like their life. They're mad because they have to go to work the next. I got to go to this stupid job tomorrow. I don't like it. But they just spent the entire weekend binge watching on the couch and not doing anything. And you'll have people that will literally brag about, oh my God, we binge watched Game of Thrones from 6 o'clock Friday to 6 o'clock Sunday. And then come Monday morning, they're pissed off because they don't like their life. And I tell people this: when's the last time you heard someone say, "Oh my God, ooh, Meredith, I'm tired. Wow, we binge studied our 401k and retirement all weekend." Like, who says that? No one. But even this here, you want to talk about our culture? Here's another one. People know you can get exited from the company personally by me if you ever say, "Thank God it's Friday." Because if you are trading 2 for 5, you're in the wrong place. You're not doing right by yourself, and you're not doing right by us. So if you're trading 2 for 5, don't work here. I will personally help you find the place that's going to make you happy. Because why can't you say, "Thank God it's Tuesday"? Why, what you should not be trading 2 for 5 in your life. And then the last thing, when you said, personal accountability, here's something that we want to, again, throw off to this mythical thing that we're looking for. You hear so many people say, I can't find happiness. I'm looking for happiness. I can't find it. Well, okay, first of all, let's stop right there. It's not hiding from you. So what are you looking for? It's not around the corner. It's not under the couch. Happiness is not hiding from you. So when you say you can't find it and you're looking for it, no, you have to create it. That's the only way it's going to happen. You have to create your happiness. And happiness is not someone else's happiness. You have to define it. If someone says their happiness is, "I want to be on the Forbes 400 richest people," okay, that's one person. If someone else says, "I want to make $36,000 a year, but I want to live in a tiny house out in the middle of Idaho," great, beautiful. Go get your happiness. Go create it. So it's not what someone else is creating for us or tells us, or social media. You have to create your happiness. So stop telling everybody it's lost and you can't find it and you've been looking for it, because you can look your entire life. It ain't going to come knocking on your door. You're not going to find it. You're not going to walk up a mountain one day like, "Holy shit, happiness, there you are." No, it's not coming.
JeVon, there's a theme that runs through everything you've been talking about in our conversation today. You looked within to find the strengths to pursue what it was you wanted to do. And all of the principles, the values and behaviors you're alluding to all have to do with that same thing. Pulling from within, not looking externally for the reason why you're the way you are. And I want you to know how much I admire that. There's one final thing I'd like to ask you about, because I know you're very picky about language, words that we use, and certain words that people use all the time in the workplace. You have said, I don't like what we're saying here. Give some examples of words that you think don't serve us well, and what would you replace them with?
So here's a big one. Recruit and retain. Oh, we want to recruit and retain the best people. Okay, I don't. And we were like, "What?" They go, go look up the definition of retain. The definition is to keep possession of. I'm not trying to keep possession of anyone. You talk about plantation slavery and like, "I want to keep possession of those people." No, I am not looking to keep possession of anyone. So I don't want to recruit and retain. We want to attract and provide. We want to attract great people to the company, and we want to provide meaningful, valuable work, fulfilling work, great salaries, phenomenal culture. So we want to attract and provide. The other one, human capital. Meredith, what the hell is that? Are we trafficking people now? Human capital? And then people will double down on it and they'll say, people are our greatest assets. Sorry, my investment account is my greatest asset. When you look at people as an asset, again, I'm going right back to the plantation slavery mentality. That means, okay, all of those people are out in the field working because they are my assets that are producing for me. If that's your mentality, you got to look within, because if you see people as your greatest assets, you've got some issues personally that you need to dig down deep on. So, and then the last one I'll give you is
well, wait, you have to explain what's your alternative language for that.
For human capital, people. Like, it's just people. Our our head of people. She takes care of people. Like, it just put it out there. Even the word diversity, I got an issue with that. We've weaponized that damn word. If you say diversity in our country right now, I'll say it out loud. Right now, we're talking about Black people. When you say diversity, I've yet to hear someone say we're talking about Jewish people. We're talking about Black people. I've yet to hear somebody say we're talking about transgender. We're talking about Black people. And so when we say diversity, here's what people don't realize as well. I can be in a room with 10 middle-aged white men and have diversity. Some are married, some aren't, some have children, some don't, some went to college, some didn't. And I've got diversity. So when we say diversity, what are we actually talking about? We're talking about people. We say we want diverse opinions, diverse thoughts. You only do that with people. So I don't like how we've weaponized certain words, and because it really comes down to people. And we ask, what do I replace those things with? I call it out. We're talking about people. So many of our interviews, people will come in and they want to look like they're really bringing it to the interview. So what are your DEI initiatives? And I you can see it in people's faces right off the bat. I go, well, first of all, DEI and initiatives, it's not an initiative. First of all, an initiative is a software implementation, because you have a start and you have a finish. There's no finish line with diversity. You don't win. So when you say initiative and you put it with DEI, that's a problem in itself. Second, stop saying DEI and breaking it down to an acronym. People are only doing that because it makes it very nice and soft, that they don't have to really get into a deep conversation. Say what it is: diversity, equity, and inclusion. So if you're asking me about diversity, equity, and inclusion, first and foremost, define diversity. And you see people stop immediately, because what are we talking about? Are we talking about Latinos, Blacks, Jewish, Asian? What's the conversation? Let's define it now. And that's where I find it interesting that our country, we're quick to jump on the hotness. So for us, I'm very straightforward about our culture. Let's not jump on the hotness of society. Let's have real, open, honest conversations, call things what they are, hear people's opinions. And the number one, I'll end it with this, Meredith, is, as a people, listen, learn, and seek to understand. You can't form an opinion if you've not listened, learned, and sought to understand what are we actually talking about.
That's a great point to close on, I think, JeVon, because that's the essence of, to me, putting people first, is that willingness to do those three things: to listen, learn, and then really understand what it is, so that you accomplish the kind of culture you were just describing, because that's so key to people getting along. I love all the things that you've brought up. This is, to me, has been very thought-provoking, because I think there are some old playbook ideas that you have, kind of ripped up and said, no, that's not working. We need to look at what's really happening here and what's really needed. So I want to acknowledge you and thank you for speaking your truth and bringing up points that I don't know if people think about it often enough. And thank you for the kind of culture you've created where you do put people first, because I can hear it in your voice and in your being and how you are. And the awards you and the company have received are just a reflection of the kind of workplace you're creating where people do feel welcome. I love that that's the key word for you in creating a company where people thrive and love coming to work. So thank you so much for being with me today, for being who you are in the world and making the difference that you are.
Meredith, thank you for the kind words. I greatly appreciate it. It's like I said, it's in my opinion, it's nothing special. Just do right by people.
Well, I differ with you there. I think it is because it's not common, unfortunately.
Now that's true. I always tell people, I said, look, all I've got is common sense, and they look, common sense isn't that common.
Exactly. Well, thank you, JeVon. I look forward to staying in touch.
Thank you, Meredith.
Thanks for tuning in to my podcast. Now head over to growstrongleaders.com and check out our 2 books, Connect with Your Team and Peer Coaching Made Simple. While you're there, download the free Facilitator Guide to find out how to implement our unique peer coaching system. Until next time, I'm Meredith Bell.